Have you ever wondered if living closer to your children in old age truly guarantees happiness? For many, this idea feels like a natural choice. Yet an elderly man who once thought the same learned a profound lesson. Physical proximity does not necessarily lead to emotional closeness. His journey of self-discovery, rooted in the teachings of Buddhism, sheds light on the illusions of happiness and attachment. Picture this: a man who spent his entire life nurturing his children, ensuring their comfort and success. Now, in the autumn of his years, he finds himself alone in a quiet house. With the hope of filling the void of loneliness, he decides to move closer to his children. At first, the change brings warmth and joy. Laughter fills the air again. Yet over time, reality sets in. Visits become less frequent, and the connection he yearned for remains elusive. It is here, in this seemingly heartbreaking realization, that his story truly begins. The Buddha once said, "Attachment leads to suffering." The elderly man's tale encapsulates this truth, demonstrating that true happiness arises not from others, but from within. His path to enlightenment unfolds as he grapples with his expectations, learns to embrace impermanence, and discovers the peace that solitude can bring. Through his transformation, he reminds us that the greatest mistake in old age is not about where we live, but how we live. Let us journey into the heart of this profound story, exploring the timeless wisdom it holds and uncovering the lessons it offers for anyone seeking genuine happiness. Along the way, we'll draw parallels with some of the world's most influential figures, from Nelson Mandela to Oprah Winfrey, whose lives echo similar truths. An elderly man who had spent his younger years diligently raising a family found himself alone in a quiet house. Reflecting on his life, he decided to move closer to his children, hoping to fill the void of loneliness. At first, his decision brought warmth and joy, but as time went on, he discovered that physical proximity did not guarantee emotional closeness. He was reminded of the Buddhist teaching, "Attachment leads to suffering." This tale illustrates a common misconception that family proximity equates to happiness. But is it fair to burden our children with our emotional needs? As the elderly man settled into his new life near his children, he began to explore the origins of his loneliness. Was it merely the absence of loved ones, or something deeper, a misplaced dependence on external sources for happiness? This question led him on a path of self-discovery. He recalled the times when his children were young, and he found immense joy in their presence. Now he realized his joy was tethered to the expectation that they would reciprocate the same level of devotion. This dependency was the seed of his suffering. The Buddha's teachings remind us that true happiness arises from within. The elderly man's journey underscores the importance of cultivating inner peace rather than seeking it through external circumstances. By understanding the nature of his loneliness, he began to address the root causes of his emotional struggles, the desire for closeness. An elderly man who had spent his younger years diligently raising a family found himself alone in a quiet house. Reflecting on his life, he decided to move closer to his children, hoping to fill the void of loneliness. At first, his decision brought warmth and joy, but as time went on, he discovered that physical proximity did not guarantee emotional closeness. He was reminded of the Buddha's teaching, "Attachment leads to suffering." This tale illustrates a common misconception that family proximity equates to happiness. But is it fair to burden our children with our emotional needs? As the elderly man settled into his new life near his children, he began to explore the origins of his loneliness. Was it merely the absence of loved ones, or something deeper, a misplaced dependence on external sources for happiness? This question led him on a path of self-discovery. He recalled the times when his children were young, and he found immense joy in their presence. Now he realized his joy was tethered to the expectation that they would reciprocate the same level of devotion. This dependency was the seed of his suffering. The Buddha's teachings remind us that true happiness arises from within. The elderly man's journey underscores the importance of cultivating inner peace, rather than seeking it through external circumstances. By understanding the nature of his loneliness, he began to address the root causes of his emotional struggles, the illusion of happiness. Initially, the elderly man's life felt fulfilled. His grandchildren's laughter and his children's frequent visits brought comfort. Yet slowly the visits became less frequent, and the excitement diminished. The happiness he expected to sustain him began to fade. His unmet expectations led to feelings of isolation and resentment. The Buddha's wisdom echoes here. Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. This advice teaches us to cherish fleeting moments rather than clinging to what we cannot control. As the man reflected on his situation, he started to question his assumptions about happiness. He realized that the joy he experienced when his family was around was fleeting and often dependent on their presence. This dependency highlighted the transient nature of external happiness. He began to practice mindfulness, focusing on the present moment and finding contentment in small, everyday pleasures. The taste of a warm cup of tea, the rustling of leaves outside his window, and the gentle rhythm of his breath became sources of solace. This story mirrors the experiences of renowned figures like Steve Jobs. In his later years, Jobs often spoke about finding peace and satisfaction through simplicity and presence, despite his earlier tendency to chase external achievements. Just as Jobs' final reflections encouraged others to cherish life's small but profound moments, the elderly man's journey teaches us that true happiness lies within, untethered from external circumstances. The illusion of happiness based on external factors is also evident in global leadership examples. Consider former President Barack Obama, who balanced the overwhelming responsibilities of the presidency by grounding himself in family dinners and private moments. Obama's deliberate effort to anchor himself in present joys amidst chaos reflects the teachings of mindfulness, a practice the elderly man began to adopt. The man's newfound contentment was not immediate. It required consistent practice and introspection. At first, he struggled to detach from his longing for his children's attention. But over time, he began to see the futility of placing his emotional well-being in the hands of others. Instead, he nurtured an appreciation for the simple joys of life: a sunrise, the taste of freshly brewed tea, or the sound of birds chirping in the morning. The weight of expectations. The elderly man's growing bitterness stemmed from his belief that his children owed him care in his old age. This expectation caused suffering, as it was built on the assumption that his sacrifices entitled him to their undivided attention. A Zen master's advice in a dream guided him towards self-reflection. True peace does not come from others, it comes from within. Through meditation, the man realized that expecting others to fulfill our desires creates unnecessary suffering. The journey to inner peace begins when we release these burdensome expectations. One might recall the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who embodied the principle of self-reliance despite immense challenges. Gandhi's commitment to simplicity and independence offered him a profound sense of peace that transcended external circumstances. Similarly, the elderly man discovered that his expectations were the true source of his pain. By relinquishing them, he opened himself to a more harmonious relationship with his family. The elderly man's bitterness transformed into compassion as he reflected on his children's lives. They too faced their own challenges and responsibilities. Instead of feeling resentment, he began to empathize with their struggles. This shift in perspective allowed him to let go of the notion that they were obligated to meet his needs. In doing so, he freed himself from the chains of expectation and opened the door to a more authentic relationship with his family. This shift in perspective aligns with the life of figures like Queen Elizabeth II, who maintained grace and understanding in her relationships with her family. Her ability to balance her role as a monarch with empathy for her children's unique paths provides a modern-day example of relinquishing expectations for the sake of harmony. Similarly, the elderly man's transformation led to improved relationships as he began to appreciate his children for who they were rather than what they could provide. The realization of attachment Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. The man's pain did not arise from his children's actions, but from his attachment to the idea that they were responsible for his happiness. Remembering the Buddha's teaching, "Nothing is yours, you cannot hold on to anything," he began to let go of his possessive feelings toward his children. This transformation allowed him to understand that his children had their own lives and responsibilities. By clinging to them, he was not only causing his own suffering, but also straining their relationship. This concept of letting go can be compared to the leadership style of former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. After his presidency, Carter focused on humanitarian work, gracefully stepping back from the limelight to support others without clinging to political power or expectations. Similarly, the elderly man learned to step back emotionally, recognizing that his happiness could not depend on the actions of his children. Letting go of attachment did not mean that he loved his children any less. On the contrary, it allowed him to love them more freely. His love was no longer conditional on their actions or proximity. He learned to appreciate their presence when they were around and to wish them well when they were not. This unconditional love brought him a sense of liberation and deepened his connection with his family. The transformation also mirrors the life of tech entrepreneur Bill Gates. After stepping down from Microsoft, Gates directed his energy toward philanthropy, letting go of his attachment to corporate success. His focus on helping others instead of seeking personal gain reflects the freedom and growth that come with releasing attachment. The elderly man's journey echoes this, as he found joy in giving his love freely, unencumbered by expectations. The dangers of dependence. The man's dependence on his children highlighted another Buddhist lesson: self-reliance. By waiting for others to bring him happiness, he had relinquished his independence. A Zen story illustrates this point. A man carrying a heavy sack of grain complains about its burden, yet refuses help, knowing that carrying it himself builds his strength. This lesson resonates strongly in the lives of global icons like Nelson Mandela. During his 27 years of imprisonment, Mandela relied on his inner strength and resilience to endure. He found purpose within himself and emerged as a global symbol of independence and leadership. Similarly, the elderly man came to understand that his happiness could not rest on the actions or attention of his children. He needed to bear his emotional burdens and grow stronger through the process. This realization inspired him to explore new activities and cultivate self-reliance. He turned to gardening, finding joy in nurturing plants and witnessing their growth. Reading became another source of fulfillment, opening windows to new worlds and perspectives. Volunteering at a local community center allowed him to connect with others while making meaningful contributions. These pursuits not only enriched his days, but also reignited his sense of purpose and autonomy. Figures like Oprah Winfrey exemplify the power of self-reliance. Despite numerous hardships, Oprah built her success by focusing on personal growth and purpose, rather than seeking validation from others. Her journey reflects the same lesson the elderly man embraced. The path to fulfillment begins within. By taking control of his emotional well-being, the man transformed his life from one of dependence to one of independence. The path to inner peace. Through meditation, the man came to a profound realization. His suffering stemmed from attachment and expectations. He embraced the teaching, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Shifting his perspective, he focused on gratitude and the simple joys of daily life. Instead of longing for his children's attention, he cherished their occasional visits without placing undue importance on them. This shift in mindset led to a newfound serenity. Gratitude became a cornerstone of his practice. Each day, he reflected on the blessings in his life, no matter how small. The beauty of a sunrise, the kindness of a stranger, or the tranquility of meditation filled his heart with appreciation. This gratitude transformed his outlook and brought him a sense of peace that no external circumstance could shake. Historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi also exemplify the power of gratitude. Despite facing immense challenges, Gandhi found solace in small acts of kindness in moments of inner reflection. His ability to focus on what he had rather than what he lacked mirrored the transformation the elderly man experienced. The practice of gratitude enabled the man to find joy in life's simplest moments and to let go of the unrealistic demands he had placed on others. As the man's gratitude deepened, he became more attuned to the present moment. World leaders like Jacinda Ardern, who are known for their empathy and mindfulness, remind us of the importance of finding peace in the now. Ardern's approach to leadership, balancing strength with compassion, reflects the serenity that the man discovered within himself. By embracing gratitude, he created a life centered on peace and appreciation rather than longing and dissatisfaction. The man's journey demonstrates that true inner peace is cultivated through consistent effort and reflection. It does not depend on external circumstances or the actions of others, but grows from within. This profound realization transformed not only his relationship with himself, but also his relationships with those around him. By embracing gratitude and mindfulness, he found a sense of contentment that external circumstances could never provide. The freedom of letting go. By practicing non-attachment, the man released the weight of expectations. His relationship with his children improved as he no longer demanded their attention. When they visited, it was out of love, not obligation, creating a more genuine bond. The practice of letting go resonates with the experiences of influential figures like Bill Gates. After stepping down from his leadership role at Microsoft, Gates redirected his energy toward philanthropy without clinging to the power or recognition he once had. This decision not only brought him personal fulfillment, but also strengthened his relationships with colleagues, family, and global communities. Similarly, the elderly man's decision to let go of expectations allowed his connections with his children to flourish. Letting go brought him freedom and enabled him to experience life's beauty without clinging to what he couldn't control. This freedom allowed him to focus on appreciating the moments he shared with his children, rather than yearning for their constant attention. Consider Queen Elizabeth II, whose leadership is marked by grace and an ability to release personal desires for the greater good. Her understanding of impermanence and the evolving nature of familial roles mirrors the wisdom the elderly man achieved. By shifting his perspective, he no longer viewed his children's visits as obligations, but as cherished opportunities for connection. As his children noticed the change in him, they felt more at ease during their visits. The absence of pressure allowed their interactions to be more joyful and meaningful. This mutual understanding strengthened their bond and brought a sense of harmony to the family. Historical examples like Nelson Mandela also illustrate the power of releasing expectations. Mandela's ability to forgive and rebuild relationships after decades of imprisonment reflects an inner freedom born from letting go of anger and attachment. The elderly man similarly found liberation in releasing his need for control and in appreciating life's impermanence. The lesson of impermanence. One of Buddhism's core teachings is the impermanence of all things. Recognizing this truth, the man accepted that his children had grown into independent adults with their own lives. By embracing change, he found peace in the present moment. The Buddha's words, "All compounded things are impermanent," served as a guiding principle. The man's role as a father had evolved, and so had his relationship with his children. Clinging to the past only prolonged his suffering. This acceptance of impermanence extended beyond his family. He began to see the transient nature of all things in life. This understanding brought him a sense of liberation and allowed him to approach each moment with equanimity and grace. The lesson of impermanence is also reflected in the lives of leaders like Barack Obama. During his presidency, Obama often spoke about the importance of adapting to change both personally and politically. His acceptance of life's evolving nature allowed him to navigate challenges with composure and wisdom, much like the elderly man's transformation. Consider the life of Nelson Mandela, who emerged from decades of imprisonment with an unshakable understanding of change. Mandela's ability to embrace impermanence enabled him to rebuild South Africa through reconciliation and compassion. Similarly, the elderly man learned to accept that his role in his children's lives had shifted. By doing so, he freed himself from the pain of clinging to the past. This understanding of impermanence also helped the man appreciate the beauty of life's fleeting moments. Each sunrise, each conversation, and each quiet moment became precious in its transience. Figures like Mahatma Gandhi, who practiced detachment and simplicity, illustrate the power of living fully in the present. Gandhi's teachings remind us that impermanence is not a source of fear, but a foundation for gratitude and peace. As the man embraced the lesson of impermanence, he discovered a newfound sense of freedom. By letting go of the desire to control his children's lives or cling to past roles, he found joy in the present and a deeper connection with himself. This transformation reflects the universal truth that peace comes not from resisting change, but from accepting it with grace. Finding joy in solitude. Solitude became a source of joy for the man. He discovered that loneliness stemmed from craving external validation, whereas solitude allowed him to connect with his inner self. Through meditation, tending a garden, and savoring quiet moments, he found fulfillment in his own company. Zen teachings emphasize the importance of living in the present. By embodying this wisdom, the man transformed his solitude into a powerful tool for personal growth. Historical examples of this principle can be found in figures like Henry David Thoreau, whose time at Walden Pond remains a testament to the transformative power of solitude. Thoreau's reflections on simplicity and self-reliance resonate deeply with the elderly man's journey. He realized that being alone did not equate to being lonely, but was instead an opportunity to reconnect with his inner self. In solitude, the man found clarity and strength. Figures like Oprah Winfrey, who frequently advocates for periods of quiet reflection amidst her busy life, illustrate the power of intentional solitude. Oprah's success is a testament to the value of stepping back, evaluating one's inner state, and drawing strength from within. Similarly, the elderly man's newfound independence enriched his life and deepened his spiritual practice, allowing him to approach each day with a sense of wonder and gratitude. This transformation is mirrored in the life of former President Barack Obama, who has often spoken about the importance of solitude in maintaining balance and clarity. Despite the demands of his presidency, Obama carved out time for reflection, demonstrating that solitude can be a source of empowerment rather than isolation. The wisdom of non-attachment. Non-attachment became the cornerstone of the man's peace. Buddhism teaches that clinging to people or outcomes leads to suffering because nothing is permanent. By releasing his expectations of his children, he freed himself from disappointment and resentment. The practice of non-attachment can be seen in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi often spoke of reducing desires and letting go of attachments as a path to true freedom. Similarly, the elderly man came to understand that his emotional turmoil was rooted in his attachment to the idea that his children should prioritize him. By letting go of this belief, he found liberation. This realization brought harmony to his relationships. His children's visits were no longer measured by frequency, but by the love and connection they shared. Figures like Oprah Winfrey illustrate how non-attachment to others' validation fosters stronger bonds. Oprah's emphasis on self-worth and inner peace mirrors the man's transformation, where his relationships deepened once he let go of unrealistic expectations. World leaders like Nelson Mandela also demonstrated the power of non-attachment. Despite enduring decades of imprisonment, Mandela chose to release resentment and build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Similarly, the elderly man's acceptance of his children's autonomy brought a profound sense of joy and harmony. The full circle of life. As the man aged, he reflected on the cycles of life. Just as he had once nurtured his children, he now nurtured himself. The lessons of Zen guided him through this new chapter, emphasizing acceptance and growth. Life's cycles, each with unique lessons, are opportunities for spiritual evolution. By embracing this truth, the man walked his path with grace and wisdom. The concept of life's cyclical nature can be found in the words of former President Barack Obama, who has frequently acknowledged the phases of his journey from community organizer to leader of the free world, and eventually to a reflective post-presidency role. Obama's understanding of these transitions as a chance to grow and redefine himself mirrors the elderly man's transformation. Each stage of life offers distinct lessons, and it is our acceptance of these changes that leads to wisdom. Similarly, Bill Gates' transition from CEO of Microsoft to philanthropist highlights the beauty of evolving life cycles. Gates embraced the opportunity to redirect his energy toward global issues, understanding that his role in the world could shift while remaining impactful. The elderly man, like Gates, found fulfillment in nurturing his own growth and redefining his purpose as his familial roles changed. The teachings of Zen emphasize that each cycle in life is impermanent yet meaningful. The man realized that by nurturing his inner self, he could create a sense of wholeness that was not reliant on external validation. This perspective allowed him to view his relationship with his children as one of mutual respect and independence rather than obligation. World leaders like Nelson Mandela exemplified this mindset, using the latter years of his life to foster reconciliation and unity, demonstrating that every phase of life holds the potential for profound contributions. The man also drew inspiration from figures like Queen Elizabeth II, who has gracefully adapted to the changing dynamics of her family and role as a monarch. Her ability to accept transitions with poise and focus on her personal evolution resonates with the Zen principle of embracing life's cycles. The elderly man, by reflecting on his past and embracing the present, was able to find peace and purpose in his new chapter. The legacy of peace. In his final years, the man achieved profound peace. His relationships thrived, not because of proximity, but because of genuine connection. By letting go of control, he allowed love to flow freely. This transformation mirrors the later life of Nelson Mandela, who spent his post-presidency years fostering harmony and reconciliation. Mandela's decision to prioritize genuine connection over power or control highlights the wisdom of letting go. Similarly, the elderly man's release of expectations allowed his relationships with his children to flourish naturally. His life became a testament to the teachings of Buddhism. True happiness comes from within. The man's journey echoes the sentiments of Mahatma Gandhi, who found peace in simplicity and a deep connection with inner truth. Gandhi's philosophy reminds us that contentment is rooted in how we live, not in where we are. This story also resonates with figures like Bill Gates, who, after stepping down from his role at Microsoft, channeled his energy into philanthropy. By shifting his focus to helping others, Gates demonstrated the value of relinquishing control for a greater purpose. The elderly man, in his own way, embodied this principle by nurturing love and harmony without imposing demands on his children. By letting go of control, the man allowed love to flow freely, creating a foundation for relationships that were genuine and heartfelt. This act of surrender also brought him inner peace, aligning with the Zen teaching that freedom comes from relinquishing attachment. Figures like Queen Elizabeth II, who has navigated complex family dynamics with grace and acceptance, exemplify this same principle. The man's life became a reminder that the biggest mistake in old age is not where we live, but how we live. His story highlights the importance of embracing impermanence and focusing on the present moment. As the Buddha said, "You yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way." This timeless wisdom guided the man to a life of fulfillment and peace, leaving a legacy of love and understanding for his children and beyond. This legacy reminds us of figures like Oprah Winfrey, whose emphasis on authenticity and connection inspires others to prioritize meaningful relationships over superficial ties. The elderly man's journey encourages us to reflect on our own lives, asking not what others can do for us, but how we can cultivate peace and joy within ourselves. What does this story teach us? At its core, it's a reminder that happiness is an inside job. The elderly man's journey is not just a personal tale, but a universal truth that resonates across cultures and eras. He discovered that true contentment does not come from external circumstances, but from the cultivation of inner peace, the practice of mindfulness, and the ability to let go of expectations. The lessons from his life encourage us to reflect on our own. Are we clinging to relationships, roles, or material possessions in hopes of finding happiness? Are we placing our emotional well-being in the hands of others, expecting them to fulfill needs that can only truly be met from within? These are questions that challenge us to dig deep and reconsider the sources of our joy. History and contemporary examples abound of individuals who have embraced this wisdom. Nelson Mandela's reconciliation efforts, Oprah Winfrey's emphasis on authenticity, and Bill Gates' shift toward philanthropy all illustrate the power of letting go and living purposefully. These figures, like the elderly man, demonstrate that fulfillment is not tied to external achievements, but to an inner state of grace and understanding. As we conclude, consider this. What would it mean for you to live without attachment? To let go of expectations and embrace each moment as it comes? Perhaps the elderly man's story holds a mirror to your own life, offering a gentle reminder that the path to peace begins within. This journey is not easy, but as the Buddha taught, it is one worth taking. You yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way. In striving, we find not just peace, but a legacy of love and wisdom that echoes beyond our years. Let this story inspire you to pause, reflect, and embrace the freedom that comes from within. For it is not where we live, but how we live that defines the quality of our lives and the legacy we leave behind.